It always kind of made sense to me. It's hard to figure all of this out, but where did I come from? Where did that come from? So you ask yourself this perplexing question. Where do they come from? Most of us, and when we think about that question, we come up with an answer. The answer is, as hard as it is for us to even imagine, our parents did it. It's a tough one. But in one blissful moment, one drop of human protoplasm in some mysterious way collided with another, and life began. In this microscopic dot, I could remember years ago, we had 4 children in 7 years. My teenage daughter Stephanie, at that time had to take on a lot of the helping responsibilities around the house. When these babies just kept showing up, we found out that we were going to have another child, another mysterious thing happened, and another child was on its way. My wife and I flipped a coin to decide who would tell Stephanie, and I lost. So I cornered her one day when she was in a really good mood. I said, "Honey, you're not going to believe this, but we're going to have another baby." "Oh, that's great," she said in their hands. Instant pose. "This is it. This foot here, this one out here, that's terrific." And I said, well, it really is. And well, you should probably be glad that we didn't have the same attitude that you have when we found out about you. She said, "Yes, but how do you think it feels?" I said, "Well, why don't you tell me?" She said, "No, Dad, how do you think it feels to be the only kid in junior high school who has parents who like to do it?" I said, "Steph, I know this is going to be hard for you to accept, but Grandma and Grandpa do it." "That is just sick," she said, storming out. So when we think about where we came from, that sort of is the place that we get to in our hearts. But just go back to that moment for a second and understand that. Remember what I said earlier. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Just keep that idea in mind. If you go back to the time of your absolute beginning into the material world, you know that there was a microscopic dot. This microscopic dot included everything that you needed for this physical journey. You can't even see it with a microscope. It's just too mysterious and too mystical to even contemplate, isn't it? Something as tiny as you could get 1,000,000 of them on the head of a pin contains everything that you needed for this physical journey. Everything. Your birth was in there. The shape of your eye is in there. Your height is in there. The color of your skin is in there. I hold a hair up on the pillow and say, and I've had this experience several million times, what held it in yesterday? You must ask that question. Like, what held it up yesterday, don't you? Why was it black yesterday and it's gray today? Where did that one come from? All of these changes are in this microscopic dot. So what I'd like to do, just for a few seconds here, is to go back to take the microscopic dot that is your beginnings, in which there's a future pole that is created every face and everybody and everything in here and everyone out there watching today. In that one instant miraculous moment, everything that you needed for this physical journey was in there. It's too hard to comprehend. You just accept it. So now we take the dot and we look at the dot and we say, let's find the origin of the dot that began me. You put it under a microscope and you turn up the magnification. What you see as you turn up this magnification is you see molecules. Inside of those molecules are mostly particles. These particles are all flitting about, and there's mostly just empty spaces in there. And you take one of these particles out. We call them atoms. You put this atom, looking for your source, looking for where you began, under another atomic microscope. Turn up the magnification even stronger. What do you discover? As you turn up the magnification, you discover that it's just more empty spaces and more particles with new names. Protons, electrons, neutrons, croutons, whatever you want to call them, right? We memorize them in junior high school, right? So you take one of these electrons, you're still just looking for your source. Where did I come from? You turn up the magnification on this electron microscope. What do you see? More spaces and more particles, all flitting about in a dance, this huge dance. You take one of those and you turn up the magnification. What you have are new particles with new names called quarks. We're now looking at quantum physics, the study of the behavior of matter at the tiniest levels. We're just looking for our source. Finally, we take one of those quarks. These quarks are really weird. My friend Deepak Chopra has often said to me, Wayne, he said, quantum physics is not only stranger than you think it is, it's stranger than you can think. Because you take a tiny little subatomic particle and observe it. The fact is that the nature of your observing changes what you're observing. If you look at it in a certain way, it becomes one thing. If you turn away, it becomes something else. It's truly a scientific fact that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now you take this tiny little subatomic particle, you put it in a particle accelerator, you rev up the speed of these things and collide them at 250,000 miles per hour. You collide them. You open up the particle accelerator looking for your source. Guess what's in there? Nothing. No thing. The dot that began, you originated from a field of energy that has no boundaries, no beginnings, no ends. It's infinite. It's an infinite potential. The question that I have for you is, if you can get this, that you didn't begin with that particle because particles themselves do not create more particles. St. Paul put it this way in the New Testament, that which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. They talked a little strange in those days. What that means is that everything that we see in the material world doesn't originate in the material world. It's the spirit that gives life. The flesh counts for nothing. If the shape of your eye can be in an energy field that has no boundaries, no form, no material existence, why not the shape of your life? Why not everything that you are destined to become? Why can't that be a part of this energy field as well? You showed up here from a field that I call intention. That beautiful entity that is here to my left, your right, is what I am going to call, for the rest of this program, the source from which we all originated. Every particle that shows up on this planet, and that's what Max Planck said, and that's what Carlos Castaneda said, and that's what every metaphysician said. That's what all of the great spiritual teachings on this planet say. Our source is spirit. It is something other than the physical. If you had a set of magical binoculars and you could look at that field, what I'm going to describe in this program is what that field would look like. My suggestion to you here is this. If you want to understand intention and the power of intention, it means suspending your ego, the part of you that believes that you are separate from this source. Because that's where all of our problems originated, all of our struggles, even our illnesses. This is a source of well-being. Everything that emanates from this source emanates from a field of well-being. It looks like something, it sounds like something. One of the things that it sounds like I took from one of the great spiritual traditions in the universe. It's from the Bhagavad Gita, what is called the Hindu holy book, the Song of the Lord. But you can look in any spiritual tradition, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, or whatever. Basically, they all say the same thing. If this source that we call God or soul or spirit, if it could speak, this is what it would sound like. Then later on, I'm going to talk to you about what it looks like. What does it look like? I am the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything emanates from me. That's what it sounds like. Everything emanates from me. So that means you. And that's why the words "with God, all things are possible" mean that when you find in your heart a way to reconnect to this, and remember what I talked about in those opening quotes, that this field of intention is a field that is only corroded because we take on something that separates us from the source. That is called the ego. The ego is really nothing more than an idea that we carry around. It's the source of virtually all of our problems. The only difficulty is you can't check into a hospital. Like if you've got an appendix problem, you check in, get an appendectomy. There's no place that I know of that gives an egoectomy. See, it would be nice, but it doesn't work that way. So what you want to do is figure out a way to get rid of this idea that who I am is separate from this. This is your source. And when you reconnect to your source, live in harmony with your source, you are connecting to the field of intention. When you're with this field of intention, everything that this field of intention from which all material worlds emanate, everything that it can do, you can do because you are it, and it is you. The problem that we have is we've come to a place where we believe that we are separate from it. So we start to believe that I am what I do, and I am what I have, and I am separate from everybody else, and I am my reputation, and I'm separate from what is missing in my life. But this field from which all things originate, if it's everywhere, it's got to be in you. And if it's everywhere, and it has to be in you, it has to also be in everything that you perceive as missing from your life. It has to be in that too, because there's no place that it's not. If there's no place that it's not, you literally are already connected to everything that you would like to attract into your life. What keeps you from doing it is your belief that you're separate from your source. We want to reconnect to this source. People ask me the question, what about free will? If I was intended here, and the shape of my life was intended here from this source, where does that leave me with free will? Well, where it leaves you with free will is this. You have a free will to decide whether or not you are going to connect or not connect to that source. That's your free will. If you make a choice, a conscious choice, to stay disconnected from it, and believe that you are all of these things that I just illustrated in the ego, this field of intention doesn't know anything about non-well-being. It creates from a source of well-being. It doesn't know anything about fear, about anxiety, about worry. It just is in a constant state of creating. There's a quotation that goes like this: self-realization, which is really reconnecting to your source. Self-realization means that we have been consciously connected with our source of being. We are reconnected to this source, which I'm going to describe in detail in this program. What I believe the phases of intention look like. Once we have made this connection, then absolutely nothing can go wrong. That's from Swami Paramahansa. Nothing can go wrong when you reconnect to the source. All of our struggles, all of our illnesses, all of the scarcities in our life, all of the problems we have in our relationships, all of this stuff came about because we disconnected ourselves from a field of intention that is nothing but just well-being. It only wants you to be in a state of happiness. I said in a book that I wrote many years ago called Gifts Amicus, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. You're not going to find it in something outside of you. It is within you. It's like when you understand this and get this, connecting to intention means something that's very powerful to you. There's an observation that I came across in the writing of The Power of Intention by a man who gave a lecture. I'm not sure the exact year, but it was in the early 1900s. His name was Thomas Howard. He gave a series of lectures on mental science at Edinburgh in Scotland called the Edinburgh and Dorey Lectures. One of those observations, one of those quotations was this. I really love this. He said, "The law of flotation was not discovered by the contemplation of the sinking of things." Now imagine yourself trying to figure that out. He made an observation that before about the 15th or 16th centuries, all of the ships in the world were made out of wood. Why do you think they made ships out of wood for so many centuries? Because when you put wood in water, what happens? It floats. Our conclusion was that the law of flotation must be, you want things to float, make them out of things that float. But now we have realized that in studying the law of flotation, it has nothing to do with what the material is made of. It has to do with the amount of water that is being displaced. So now All the ships of the world are made out of stuff that doesn't float, and yet they float. We're celebrating now, at this time in our history and the flights of the 100-year anniversary of Orville and Wilbur Wright over in Dayton, Ohio. Imagine the law of flight being discovered by two brothers, contemplating the staying on the ground of things. What we want to do is figure out a way to reconnect ourselves, to surround ourselves with this idea that we are already connected to everything that we need for everything in our life. We've just separated ourselves by believing that we're something that we're not. In a book that I wrote a few years back called The 10 Secrets for Success and Inner Peace, which was part of a PBS special. One of those secrets is called treasuring your divinity. I came across this observation, and I was writing some notes on what I'm just talking about, on contemplating things. Listen to these words. We know that by the very nature of the creative process, which is what intention is about, learning to create the life that you want, the world that you want, the people that you want, the excitement that you want, the health that you want, everything. We know that by the very nature of the creative process, we are one with this originating spirit. Therefore, we are also one with all of its principles. Whatever this is like, whatever it sounds like, whatever it thinks like, whatever it looks like, we are one with it. Consequently, we are one with its infinite personality. We are not here as human beings having spiritual experiences. We are all spiritual beings having human experiences, all of us. We are all infinite. Therefore, our contemplation of this source as the power which we want gives us the ability to use that power. The way that we use this process is to contemplate ourselves as surrounded by the conditions which we want to produce. Keep that in mind. Yeah, underline that. You surround yourself internally with the conditions. Contemplate them which you want to produce. What is it you want to produce in your life? What do you intend to create for yourself? It's not your ego that's going to do it. It's your free will to reconnect to this, which is the source of everything. By the end of this program, you're going to be in rapport with, in harmony with this. If you call my cell phone, pick up the phone. I don't want to give that number, but if you were to call this number, this is what you would get as a message from me. Hi, this is Wayne Dyer that you've reached, and I want to feel good. If your call is designed to do anything other than that, you have reached the wrong number, and I urge you to call Dr. Phil. Feeling good is perhaps the most important thing that I can talk to you about here in cleaning up this link. If you open up the Torah, this ancient spiritual text, the Old Testament, and go to the very opening lines, Genesis 1:1, it says, "In the beginning God created heaven and earth." Pretty simple. God is infinite. Out of this source came all the material worlds. Then, if you read down 31 lines later, it says, "And all that God created was good." So good and God are synonymous, aren't they? Good and God. Just to know, just one extra, so that when you say, "I want to feel good," as you'll see as this program unfolds, you're really saying, in a way, "I want to feel God. I want to feel whatever this beautiful source of all, this divine mind, this source of all things. I want to feel it."